I want you to think back to when you were around the ages of 15, 16, 17. What were you as a person? Were you a musician yet? Were you an artist? Were you an entrepreneur? Were you a bodybuilder? Probably not. You probably weren't any of those things yet. You probably were just like a little, cut up as I was. I mean, hey, I was playing video games and all that. I wasn't really getting a lot done. But it's really incredible when you find a band that makes an album that is such a masterpiece at the ages that I just mentioned. Can you can you fathom that? You just kind of changed the entire landscape of music in a given genre when you were not even considered an adult yet. And then to top it off, you come back a few years later and you cement that fact. You prove it to the world that, bro, you are a force to be reckoned with. Today we're talking about the absolute masterclass of a band that is Decapitated from Poland. This band, dude, where do I even start? Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I remember the day I found Nility, which I actually found before Winds of Creation. When I found that album, it blew my mind wide open. Just the drumming alone. If you're trying to learn how to play the drums on this album, it will totally drive you insane. You'll never have those double kicks like Vidic had, bro. I'm sorry. I mean, maybe you will actually. That was kind of a little bit of a slander to my drummer folk out there, but gotta give the dude credit. He is on a different level at that age. Rest in peace. If only he were still here. It's really mind blowing when you find that this album and these first two records, they had amazing albums after this, like the Negation, Organic Hallucinosis. But dude, I'm sorry, they don't touch these first two records. They don't. These guys were on a different level completely when they were not even 18 yet. I mean, can you imagine that? Like, I was not really anything by the age of 18, let alone one of the best musicians in my country. I mean, Poland is not a giant country by any means, but to me, they go head to head with a lot of the other bands out of there, like Vader, and they totally just wipe the floor with most. Sorry, I'm burping. I don't know why. With most young bands at this level of just releasing their first record, they were already more technical, more precise, and more unique than so many bands. And it's actually incredible that they're still around and they still play. Granted, it's a different lineup, but these first two albums, if you have not listened to these, if you consider yourself someone who's into death metal, whether or not you like it technical, you need to listen to these records. And not only you need to, I feel like you should study it. If you're in the sense of I want to make music in the future, I want to make technical music. Let's take a pause on death metal for a second. If you just like technical music in general, that is more than just very simple notes. I mean, this band had it all, really. I'm going to play a track towards the end of the video so the brain rot people get to miss out. But it's just insane that they were on this level of creation, pun intended, when they were so young. And to this day, there are still so many bands trying to chase after Nility. They want to make a song like Spears of Madness. It's kind of like the anthem of the entire band, you know? It's their Smells Like Teen Spirit, if you will. And I think every band has a Teen Spirit track, which I will use that reference more in the future because it's kind of funny to apply it to metal. But that song alone, let's forget the rest of the album. Let's forget Mother War, Eternity Too Short. Let's just forget Babylon's Pride. Spheres of Madness alone is one of the most popular death metal songs of all time. That album came out in 2002. It's only a year younger than me. Or, yeah, sorry. It's only a year younger than me. And it's still a landmark. I mean, it's been 23 years. It's still a landmark album. that to this day it's getting referenced, it's getting cited as like the biggest inspiration for some people's bands. And you have Gorguts with Obscura, which is another album I will talk about in the future. That same thing, but to a further level, in my opinion. They absolutely blew the doors off of everybody, and when it first came out, I don't know about this album, but for them, that album did not receive critical acclaim whatsoever. It was like highly, slept on and critiqued for being too much, too much. But with songs off that record and some of my favorites off of this one, Winds of Creation, every track, dude, every track is so good. But some of the best ones, I would say personally, are track 2, Blessed. Stay blessed. Hey, that comes from that. And blessed are the sick. That's one reason I say that a lot. Uh, Dance Macabre is such a eerie, weird interlude track that always shifts the pace when you're listening to this record. Every time I play it, it just slows things down for a minute and it lets you kind of have a breather. Not long, but for a little bit, you get to let this album sedate you and it just kind of washes over all the madness you just went through. Mandatory Suicide, classic cover. I mean, every track. I'm sorry, I just kind of skipped over, but the Eye of Horus is probably my most played off that album. If you are going to listen to anything, I'm recommending in this video, the Eye of Horus is hands down one of the best technical death metal songs of all time. I will say it. I will totally stand by that any day of the week. And when it comes to Nility, one of the best tracks off of this album has got to be Mother War. It has everything. And just to, give you a little spicy preview, this is the new reissue from Earache because they finally got it. They got a clue that this album deserves some love all these years later. Finally, it got like a normal vinyl pressing. I wish I had it like on hand. I have the picture disc buried in this collection, and I'd have to dig for a minute. But finally, that original pressing, they only made 500 copies, and it goes for like $400. I will have it someday, but that's just a lot of money, man. That's a lot. That's a lot for a singular record, and especially one that is just, it's hard to find. It's hard to find. And a lot of my favorite albums, I've noticed with time, that happens a lot, actually. They, like Sentenced. Sentenced is another great example of that. Their first record, Shadows of the Past, it's another $400 album. It's from Finland, and it shouldn't be so damn expensive, but it was incredibly unique. It still stands out to this day, even though it's been 34 years. And there's still bands that are taking inspiration from that record and they want to make something like it. And that's tough, dude. That's inspiring as hell. I mean, something that these guys made when they were in their 20s and it's still being played today, not only, but it's being cited as a huge inspiration to keep making more music. And music's beautiful like that, especially with death metal, because it's such a high level art form that to even appreciate it, it takes some time. If it doesn't hit you immediately, like for me, I didn't get into this right off the jump. I actually struggled to like death metal for quite some time. But certain bands actually made it much easier for me to get into, and that should be a cause of death flag if I'm being truly where my roots are. My roots! Bloody roots! That was the start. Sepultura, Obituary, those bands changed everything for me. Everything. I think, if I remember correctly, I think Chopped in Half was my very first death metal song I ever listened to. And, man, what an absolute blessing that was, because I couldn't imagine how much different my life would be if it weren't for this music. So, take away from this video, if you have not listened to Decapitated, bro, where have you been? You got to get into it, dude. You gotta try it out. Maybe somehow you stumbled here and this is your very first like death metal type of video ever. I don't know how that happened, but please, The Eye of Horus, Spheres of Madness, check out those 2 tracks. Now, let's see if I can make a smooth transition here. Y'all really, really ought to consider jamming both of those. Because I tell you what, this CD is worth owning. Even if you can't get your hands on an original, you need to get your hands on this disc. Or the vinyl. If you can find it out there somewhere. I'm going to get a little... Yeah, there's your thumbnail. You need to get your hands on this CD. You gotta. You just can't miss out any longer, bro. It's been out for 25 years now. I mean, hey, like, I'm not saying that you can't discover things a little late. It's better to get to the party than not. But, dude, a quarter of a century ago, these high schoolers changed the face of music forever. And I find that more than madly inspiring. So with that said, I'm going to give you The Eye of Horus. I think it's going to go right to it. Oh, no, it's not. I got to skip. Enjoy.